The stars looked different when you were dying among them. Commander Thisara pressed her long fingers against the cold metal wall of her ship and felt the vibration of failing engines deep in her bones. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, at their stations, their crystalline skin glowing faintly blue in the dim emergency lighting. 67 ships floated dead in space around her flagship. 2 million souls waited for her to find a miracle that did not exist. The quantum drives had failed 3 days ago, all at once, like someone had thrown a switch across the entire fleet. Her engineers said it was sabotage. The Korthak had planted something in their systems before they fled their homeworld. "Commander, the children's ship is requesting more medical supplies," her communications officer said. His voice was tired. They were all tired. Thisara closed her eyes. The children's ship held 12,000 young ones, the future of her people. Half of them were sick now. Their food machines had broken down first, and Zalani children needed special nutrients that the adult food could not provide. "Tell them we will send what we can," she said, though they both knew it was almost nothing. She walked to the main viewing screen and stared out at her dying fleet. The Zalani ships were beautiful even in death, their curved hulls catching starlight, like frozen tears. Her people had built them for grace and speed, not for the hard journey they had been forced to make, now that grace was killing them. The war had started so suddenly. The Korthak Empire had demanded surrender or death, and her people had chosen to run instead of fight. They were scientists and artists, not warriors. They had packed their greatest treasures and their children and fled into the dark between stars. For months they had jumped from system to system, always one step ahead of the Korthak hunting fleets. They had been heading for the far edge of the galaxy, where ancient maps showed empty space and maybe safety. But the Korthak had been clever. They had planted their poison in the quantum drives during the last battle, and now the Zalani fleet was trapped like insects in amber. "Commander," her science officer called out, "the life support systems are down to 38% efficiency. We have maybe 2 weeks before the air becomes too thin to breathe." 2 weeks. Thisara had been hoping for a month. She turned back to her crew, these brave souls who had followed her into exile and would die with her in the void. "Send a message to all ship commanders," she said. "Tell them to prepare for emergency rationing. Cut everything that is not essential to life." "What about the distress beacon?" her communications officer asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a curse. They had debated it for 3 days. A distress beacon might bring help, but it would definitely bring the Korthak. Any signal strong enough to reach across the stars would be like lighting a fire in the darkness. "Not yet," Thisara said, though her heart was breaking. "Give me one more day to think." 3,000 light-years away, Captain Jake Morrison was having a much better day. His ship, the UHS Discovery, was cruising through the Kepler 442 system on a routine survey mission. The system had 3 planets, none of them suitable for human life, but the star was stable and the asteroid belt showed signs of rare metals. Jake sat in his captain's chair and watched his crew work. They were good people, all volunteers for deep space exploration. Lieutenant Amy Walsh bent over her science station, her blonde hair tied back as she studied sensor readings. At communications, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark was running system checks with his usual careful precision. "Captain," Amy called out, not looking up from her screens, "I'm getting some strange readings from the outer system." Jake pushed himself up from his chair and walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "Quantum signatures, but not like anything in our databases. They're artificial, definitely not natural, but the pattern is all wrong." Amy frowned at her instruments. "There are a lot of them, maybe 60 or 70 separate sources all clustered together." Ryan looked up from his station. "Could be a mining operation. Some of the corporations have been pushing pretty far out these days." "No," Amy shook her head. "The signatures are too big. These look like ships, but they're not moving, they're just sitting there." Jake felt that familiar tingle at the back of his neck, the one that had kept him alive through 15 years of space exploration. "How far out?" 4 billion kilometers. At the edge of the system, just sitting in empty space. Any response to standard hailing frequencies? Ryan checked his board. Nothing, sir. Either they can't hear us or they don't want to talk. Jake stared at Amy's screen, watching the strange signatures pulse like heartbeats. 60 or 70 ships, just sitting in space. That could mean a lot of things, and most of them were bad. Pirates maybe, or some kind of military buildup. But it could also mean something else, something that made his chest tighten with possibility. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker to the bridge, he said into his comm. Lisa arrived a few minutes later, her coveralls stained with grease and her red hair escaping from under her work cap. "What's up, Captain?" "Take a look at this," Jake said, pointing to Amy's screen. "What do you think?" Lisa studied the readings for a long moment. "Those are some weird power signatures. The energy output is massive, but it's not focused. It's like they're bleeding power instead of using it efficiently. Could they be in trouble? Could be. Or it could be a trap." Lisa shrugged. "Only one way to find out." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. The Discovery was alone out here, days away from the nearest human outpost. If those ships were hostile, his crew would die a long way from home. But if they were in trouble... "Set course for the signatures," Jake said. "But keep us at long range and ready to jump if things go bad." "Aye, Captain," his pilot said. As the Discovery changed course toward the mysterious ships, Jake settled back into his captain's chair. He had no way of knowing that his decision would change the course of galactic history, or that the dying aliens ahead were about to discover that humans were very different from any species they had ever met. In space, there were many ways to die, but only a few ways to live. Sometimes, Jake thought as the stars wheeled around them, you just had to choose to help and hope for the best. The Discovery moved slowly toward the cluster of alien ships, its engines humming quietly in the darkness. Captain Jake Morrison stood behind Lieutenant Amy Walsh as she studied her sensors, watching the strange signatures grow larger and clearer on her screens. "My God," Amy whispered. "Captain, these ships are huge. The largest one is almost twice the size of anything we've ever built." Jake felt his mouth go dry. Through the main viewing screen, he could see lights in the distance, scattered like dying. Stars against the black of space. As they got closer, the shapes became clearer. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. They curved and flowed like frozen music, their hulls catching starlight and throwing it back in soft rainbow patterns. "They're not moving at all," reported his pilot, Ensign Danny Cooper. "Dead in the water, Captain." "Life signs?" Jake asked. Amy bent over her instruments. "Definitely, lots of them. I'm reading millions of life forms across the fleet, but the power signatures are all wrong. Their systems are failing." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark looked up from his communications station. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of transmission. It's not directed at us, but it's leaking from their ships. The computer is trying to make sense of it." "Put it on speaker," Jake said. The bridge filled with strange sounds, like wind chimes mixed with whale song. It was beautiful and sad at the same time, and somehow Jake knew without understanding the words that these were the sounds of people in pain. "It's a language," Ryan said, his voice excited. "The computer is starting to pick up patterns. Give me a few minutes and I might be able to establish basic communication." Jake nodded, but his attention was fixed on the alien fleet. Now that they were closer, he could see the damage. Several ships showed signs of battle, their hulls scarred and blackened. Others simply looked dead, no lights showing through their transparent sections. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "I'm reading massive system failures across the entire fleet. Life support is failing, power systems are barely functioning, and their engines are completely dead. These people are dying." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Millions of beings, trapped in dead ships, slowly suffocating in the void. He had seen disasters before, but never on this scale, never anything that made him feel so small and helpless. "Distance to the nearest ship?" he asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, Danny reported. "Stop here and hold position," Jake ordered. "Ryan, how are you doing with that translation?" "Getting somewhere, Captain." The computer has identified what might be distress calls. I think I can send a basic greeting, but I can't promise they'll understand it. Jake took a deep breath. First contact with an alien species. Every human had dreamed of this moment, but not like this. Not with people dying while he watched. Send the greeting, he said. Ryan's fingers danced over his controls, and a series of tones went out from the Discovery. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien transmission stopped completely, as if the entire fleet was holding its breath. We've got their attention, Amy said. The response came as a flood of signals, all directed at the Discovery. Ryan's computer worked frantically to translate, and slowly words began to appear on his screen. They're asking who we are, Ryan said. And they want to know if we're here to help or to finish what someone else started. Jake felt his heart clench. These people had been hurt so badly that they expected every stranger to be an enemy. Tell them we're here to help, he said. Tell them we're humans, and we want to know what they need. The response took longer this time. When it came, Ryan's face went pale as he read it. Captain, they're called the Zilani. They're refugees from a war. Someone called the Korthak destroyed their homeworld, and they've been running for months. Their engines were sabotaged, and now they're trapped here with no way to move. How many of them? 2 million, sir, including children. The bridge went silent. 2 million people floating dead in space waiting to die. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think. The Discovery was just one ship with a crew of 200. They had supplies for maybe 6 months and basic medical facilities. What could they possibly do against a disaster this big? Captain, Amy said softly. The nearest ship is moving toward us. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the main screen. One of the smaller alien ships was drifting in their direction, its movements slow and careful. As it got closer, Jake could see that it was damaged, its hull showing signs of hasty repairs. They want to talk face to face, Ryan said, reading the incoming messages. Their commander is coming aboard that ship. Are they armed? I don't think so, sir. At least not in any way I can recognize. Jake made his decision. Drop our shields and open a channel. Let them know they're welcome to come aboard. Sir? Amy looked worried. We don't know anything about these people. They could be dangerous. They're dying, Amy, and they're asking for help. Jake looked around at his crew. Besides, if they wanted to hurt us, they could have done it already. Look at the size of those ships. The alien vessel docked with the Discovery 20 minutes later. Jake waited in the main airlock with Dr. Ben Torres and a security team, not knowing what to expect. When the airlock opened, he got his first look at a living Zilani. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with long limbs and fingers that ended in what looked like small crystals. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow faintly from within. Her face was narrow and elegant, with large eyes that held depths of sadness Jake had never seen before. I am Commander Thisara, she said in careful, accented English. I lead what remains of my people. Captain Jake Morrison, Jake replied. Welcome aboard the Discovery. Thisara looked around the cramped human airlock, taking in the simple, metal walls and basic equipment. Your ship is sturdy, she said, as if trying to find something polite to say. It gets the job done, Jake said with a smile. Commander, we've been monitoring your fleet. Dr. Torres here is our medical officer. What can we do to help? Thisara's large eyes filled with something that might have been hope. You would help us? Without knowing who we are or what we have done? Your people in trouble, Jake said simply. That's enough. For a long moment, Thisara just stared at him. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Morrison, my people are dying. Our children are starving, our ships are failing, and we have nowhere to go. The Korthak will find us soon, and when they do, they will finish what they started. Jake felt the weight of 2 million lives settling on his shoulders. Then we'd better get to work, he said. Captain Jake Morrison had never sent a message that would change the course of human history, but he was about to. He sat in his ready room, staring at the communication console, trying to find the right words to explain what they had found. 3. Hours had passed since Commander Thisara had returned to her ship with promises of help. 3 hours of his crew working frantically to understand the scope of the disaster they faced. Dr. Ben Torres had been examining the medical data the Zilani provided, and his face had grown paler with each report. "Jake," Ben had said, using his first name like he always did when things were serious. "Half their children are dying. Their food systems are breaking down and they need nutrients we don't even have names for. I can help some of them, but not 2 million. Chief Engineer." Lisa Parker had been just as grim. "Their technology is amazing, but it's like a house of cards. Everything depends on everything else, and when one system fails, it all comes down. I can patch some things, but I'd need a fleet of repair ships in 6 months to fix it all." Jake activated the communication system and began recording his message to Earth Command. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UHS Discovery, transmitting on emergency frequency, Alpha 7. I am requesting immediate humanitarian assistance for approximately 2 million alien refugees currently stranded in the Kepler 442 system. Repeat, 2 million civilians in immediate danger of death from system failures and starvation." He paused, knowing how crazy it sounded. "The aliens call themselves Zilani. They are refugees from a war with another species called the Korthak. They are peaceful and they are dying. I am formally requesting Operation Lifeline protocols be activated. We need medical ships, supply vessels, and repair crews. Time is critical. Morrison out." Jake sent the message on the fastest transmission possible and then waited. It would take 6 hours for his message to reach Earth, and another 6 for a response. 12 hours while people died. But humans, Jake had learned over the years, could be surprisingly fast when they needed to be. The response came in 8 hours, not 12. President Helen Carter herself appeared on the screen, her face serious but determined. "Captain Morrison, this is President Carter. Your message has been received and verified. I am authorizing Operation Starlight, the largest humanitarian mission in human history. Admiral Chris Davis is already assembling a fleet. Help is coming, Captain." "Hold on." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he called his crew together on the bridge. "People, we're about to be part of something bigger than anything we've ever done. A rescue fleet is coming, but it's going to take them 4 days to get here. Until then, we're all these people have." Lieutenant Amy Walsh looked up from her science station. "Captain, I've been working with the Zilani engineers. They've given me the specifications for their most critical systems. Maybe we can help keep them alive until the fleet arrives." "What do you need?" Jake asked. "Every spare part we have, all our emergency food supplies, and about 48 hours without sleep." Jake smiled. "You've got it. Lisa, I want you to take your best people over to their ships. See what you can fix with what we have." "Already packed and ready, Captain," Lisa said, hefting a toolkit that looked like it weighed half as much as she did. The next 4 days were the longest of Jake's life. The Discovery became the center of a desperate repair operation, with human and Zilani engineers working side by side in the failing alien ships. The language barrier was huge, but somehow they made it work. Humans pointed and gestured. Zilani sang musical instructions, and slowly, impossibly, systems began to stabilize. Dr. Torres worked around the clock in the alien medical bays, treating Zilani children with medicines he was making up as he went along. "Their biology is close enough to ours that some of our drugs work," he told Jake during one of his brief rest periods. "But close enough is still a guess, and I'm running out of supplies." On the 3rd day, Jake found himself standing in the nursery section of the largest Zilani ship, watching human crewmen feeding alien babies with improvised bottles. The babies were beautiful, with the same crystalline features as their parents, but smaller and more fragile. They made soft humming sounds when they were content, like tiny wind chimes. "They trust us," Commander Thisara said, appearing beside him. "My people have been hurt so many times, but they trust your crew completely. Why do you do this for strangers?" Jake thought about the question. "Because you needed help," he said finally. "It's not more complicated than that." Thisara studied his face for a long moment. "Your species is very young, Captain Morrison. Most races learn to be suspicious before they learn to be kind. The galaxy has not been gentle with hope." Then maybe it's time someone changed that, Jake said. On the fourth day, the human rescue fleet arrived. Jake watched from the Discovery's bridge as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. More vessels than he had ever seen in one place. Hospital ships, cargo vessels, repair ships, even converted civilian transports. All of them coming to help, people they had never met. Admiral Chris Davis contacted him from the flagship UHS Endeavour. "Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Davis. Looks like you've been busy." "Just getting started, Admiral," Jake replied. "What's our plan?" "Simple. We're going to save every single one of them." The rescue operation that followed was organized chaos. Thousands of human crew members swarmed through the Zilani fleet, replacing failing systems, distributing food and medicine, and evacuating the most critical cases to human medical ships. The humans worked with the efficiency that amazed the Zilani, who had expected any help to come with conditions and demands. Chief Petty Officer Sam Roberts led a team of engineers who seemed to work miracles. They took human equipment and Zilani technology and somehow made them work together, creating hybrid systems that neither species could have built alone. "It's like building a car out of spaceship parts and bicycle wheels," Sam explained to a confused Zilani engineer. "It shouldn't work, but if you're creative enough, it does." Dr. Megan Foster, the fleet's chief medical officer, set up field hospitals in the cargo bays of human ships, treating Zilani patients with a combination of human medicine and Zilani medical technology. "Their immune systems are similar to ours," she reported to Admiral Davis. "We can help them, but we're learning as we go." But it was the small moments that mattered most. Jake watched a human maintenance worker teaching a group of Zilani children how to play cards. He saw Zilani engineers sharing their knowledge of quantum physics with amazed human scientists. He watched crews from both species working together to save a failing life support system, neither understanding the other's language but both understanding the urgency. Lieutenant Ashley Bell, the fleet's cultural liaison officer, organized exchange programs between human and Zilani families. "They need to see that we're people too," she explained to Jake, "and we need to understand who we're helping." But even as the rescue proceeded, long-range sensors brought troubling news. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark had been monitoring communications across the sector, and what he found made everyone nervous. "Captain," Ryan said, his voice tight with worry, "I'm picking up quantum signatures at the edge of the system. Big ones moving fast. I think the Korthak have found us." The Korthak war fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm made of metal and fury. Admiral Chris Davis watched from the bridge of the UHS Endeavour as 36 alien warships took position at the edge of the system, their hulls dark and angular like the teeth of some massive predator. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're being hailed. The signal is coming from their largest ship." "Put it through," Davis said, straightening his uniform. Behind him, Captain Jake Morrison stood with Commander Thisara, who had insisted on being present when the Korthak arrived. The main screen flickered, then showed the interior of an alien bridge. The being that appeared made Davis take an involuntary step backward. The Korthak commander was huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with scaled green skin and eyes like chips of yellow ice. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel grinding against steel. "I am War Master Grathak of the Korthak Third Fleet," the alien said. "You will identify yourselves and explain why you harbor enemies of the Empire." Davis felt every eye on his bridge watching him. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "I am Admiral Chris Davis of the human fleet. These people are refugees under our protection." Grathak's laugh was like the sound of breaking bones. "Humans, we have heard whispers of your species, but you are even more primitive than we expected. Your ships are crude, your weapons are simple, and you dare to interfere in Korthak business. The Zilani are no longer your business," Davis said calmly. "They are under human protection now." "Protection?" Grathak leaned forward, his massive hands gripping the arms of his command chair. "You face 36 ships of the line with your handful of rescue vessels. You cannot protect yourselves, much less these criminals." Commander Thisara stepped forward, her crystalline features glowing with anger. "We are not criminals, Grathak. We are people who refuse to surrender our children to your slaughter. The Zelani will return to face judgment, Grathak snarled. And you humans will withdraw from the system immediately, or be destroyed with them. Davis looked around his bridge, seeing the faces of his crew. They were scared, he could tell, but none of them looked ready to back down. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, War Master. These people asked for our help, and we don't abandon people who need us. Grathak's expression shifted from contempt to puzzlement. You would fight an enemy you cannot defeat for beings you have never met? This makes no sense. Maybe not to you, Davis said, but it makes perfect sense to us. The Korthak commander studied the human admiral for a long moment. You have 1 hour to reconsider, Admiral Davis. After that, we will take what we came for and you will die for your foolishness. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Davis turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Brooks. What's our situation, Colonel? Steve's face was grim. Not good, sir. They outgun us 3-1, and their ships are built for war while most of ours are rescue vessels. In a straight fight, we'll lose. Then we don't fight straight, Davis said. What do we have that they don't expect? Captain Morrison stepped forward. Admiral, I've been studying the Korthak for the past hour. They're a military species used to fighting enemies who think like they do. But we don't think like them. Explain. Jake gestured toward the main screen, where the Korthak fleet hung in space like a wall of death. They expect us to either run or form up for a traditional battle. They're not expecting us to do something completely crazy. Davis smiled grimly. I'm listening. The plan they came up with was insane, dangerous, and completely human. While the rescue operation continued at frantic pace, the human warships began moving into position. Captain Julie Martinez took her squadron of fast attack, ships out wide, using the system's asteroid belt for cover. Commander Alex Wright coordinated with Zelani technicians to jury-rig human weapons with Zelani power systems, creating hybrid weapons that neither species had ever built before. It's not about winning, Davis explained to his captains over the fleet communication system. It's about showing them something they've never seen before. We're going to fight like humans, not like soldiers. When the hour was up, Grathak contacted them again. Your time is finished, Admiral. Withdraw now or face destruction. War Master, Davis replied. Let me show you something about humans. The battle began with the human fleet doing exactly what the Korthak expected them not to do. Instead of forming battle lines or trying to retreat, the human ships scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. Captain Martinez led her squadron in hit-and-run attacks, striking at Korthak ships and then disappearing back into the asteroid field before they could respond. It's like fighting ghosts, one of her pilots reported. They can't predict where we're going because we don't know where we're going. Meanwhile, Commander Wright's modified weapons began taking their toll. Human missiles enhanced with Zelani. Targeting systems found their marks with impossible accuracy, while Zelani energy weapons powered by human fusion reactors punched through Korthak shields like they were made of paper. But the real shock came when the Zelani themselves joined the fight. These peaceful people, who the Korthak had dismissed as harmless refugees, began using their damaged ships to shield human vessels from enemy fire. They couldn't fight, but they could protect the people who were fighting for them. Engineer Nancy Gray was working to repair a damaged human cruiser when a Korthak boarding party tried to take the ship. She sealed herself in the engine room and overloaded the fusion reactor, taking the Korthak boarders with her but saving the ship and its crew. Pilot Officer Dan Cooper led a desperate attack on the Korthak flagship, his small fighter weaving through defensive fire that should have destroyed him a dozen times over. He didn't destroy the massive warship, but he damaged its main gun just as it was about to fire on a hospital ship full of Zelani children. The battle raged for 3 hours, and slowly something extraordinary happened. The Korthak, who had expected an easy victory over primitive humans, found themselves fighting an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. Humans who sacrificed themselves for strangers. Humans who fought not for conquest or glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do. War Master Grathak watched from his command bridge as his fleet struggled against an enemy that refused to fight by any rules he understood. His ships were more powerful, his weapons more advanced, but the humans fought with something the Korthak had forgotten how to use. They fought with love. When a human medical ship moved directly into the line of fire to protect a damaged Zalani transport, Grathak felt something he had not experienced in decades: confusion. When he saw Zalani civilians using their ships as shields for human fighters, he felt something else he had almost forgotten: respect. The turning point came when Captain Morrison, piloting a damaged escort ship, made direct contact with the Korthak flagship. "War Master Grathak, this is Captain Morrison. I want to talk." "You are in no position to negotiate, human," Grathak replied, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "I'm not here to negotiate," Jake said. "I'm here to ask you a question. When was the last time anyone was willing to die for you?" The question hit Grathak like a physical blow. In his long military career, he had seen soldiers die for victory, for glory, for fear of punishment. But die for him personally? Die because they cared about him as a person? Never. "You fight for people you barely know," Grathak said slowly. "People who cannot help you, who offer you nothing in return. Why?" "Because they needed help," Jake said simply. "And because help should never come with a price." For a long moment, space was silent except for the distant sound of weapons fire. Then Grathak's voice came across the communication channel, quieter than before. "Cease fire," he ordered his fleet. "All ships, cease fire." The battle stopped as suddenly as it had begun, leaving both fleets facing each other across the void. In the silence that followed, something new was born in the galaxy. Not victory or defeat, but understanding. "Admiral Davis," Grathak said finally, "I believe we need to talk." 6 months after the battle that changed everything, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Thisara Station, watching 3 different kinds of ships work together in the space around him. Human supply vessels moved alongside, elegant Zalani transports, while Korthak patrol ships provided security for the growing colony below. It had not been easy getting here. The talks after the battle had lasted for weeks. War Master Grathak had been genuinely confused by human behavior, and it had taken time for him to understand that humans really would help strangers without expecting anything in return. Admiral Davis had been patient, explaining human philosophy, while Commander Thisara translated concepts that had no words in Korthak language. "Your species fights like us," Grathak had said during one of their meetings, "but you fight for completely different reasons. We fight to conquer, you fight to protect. I do not understand how this is possible. Maybe that's why the galaxy needs both of us," Davis had replied. The breakthrough had come when Dr. Megan Foster saved the life of a wounded Korthak warrior who had been injured in the battle. The warrior, a young soldier named Thrackmore, had been dying from internal injuries when Foster operated on him using a combination of human surgical techniques and Zalani medical technology. Grathak had visited the human medical bay every day during Thrackmore's recovery, watching human doctors work to save a being who had been trying to kill them just days before. When Thrackmore finally woke up and asked why the humans had helped him, Foster had simply said, "Because you needed help." That simple answer had done more to change Korthak thinking than hours of diplomatic talks. The 3-way alliance that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Korthak agreed to stop hunting the Zalani and to help them establish new colonies in human space. In return, humans gained access to advanced Korthak military technology and Zalani scientific knowledge, but more importantly, they gained something much rarer in the galaxy: friends. Jake smiled as he watched a group of human children playing with young Zalani in the station's central park. The human kids were teaching the alien children how to play baseball, while the Zalani youngsters showed their new friends how to make their skin glow in different colors. A young Korthak warrior sat nearby, watching the game with intense concentration as he tried to understand the rules. "Captain Morrison," a familiar voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Commander Thisara approaching, her crystalline features glowing softly in the station's artificial light. She had been promoted to colonial administrator after the Zilani Council formally requested asylum in human space. "Commander," Jake said with a smile, "how are the new settlements coming along?" "Better than we dared hope," Thaisara replied, joining him at the observation window. "The third planet has been approved for Zilani colonization, and the integration programs are exceeding all expectations." It was true. The integration of 2 million Zilani refugees into human space had gone more smoothly than anyone had predicted. Dr. Ellen Price led cultural adaptation programs that helped both species understand each other, while Administrator Frank Collins managed the complex logistics of building new cities designed for both human and Zilani needs. There had been problems. Of course, some humans, led by politicians like Senator Carl Stevens, had opposed bringing aliens into human territory. "We don't know these people," Stevens had argued in the Senate. "How do we know they won't turn on us the moment it's convenient?" But, for every voice of opposition, there had been 10 voices of support. The footage of human crews risking their lives to save alien children had spread across human space, and public opinion was overwhelmingly in favor of helping the refugees. Korthak integration had been even more surprising. General Thrackmore, the same warrior Dr. Foster had saved, had become the Korthak ambassador to human space. His reports back to the Korthak Empire had changed how his people viewed humans entirely. "They are warriors," Thrackmore had written, "but they are warriors who fight for others instead of themselves. They have strength, but they use it to protect rather than to conquer. The Empire has much to learn from them." The formal alliance had been signed just 2 weeks ago, with President Helen Carter, Commander Thaisara, and War Master Greythak meeting on neutral ground to establish the Tri-Species Accord. The agreement established trade relationships, mutual, defense pacts, and joint exploration missions to the unexplored regions of the galaxy. "Jake," Thaisara said softly, using his first name as she had learned to do, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "Our long-range sensors have detected something at the edge of Korthak space. Another species, one we have never encountered before. They appear to be aggressive." Jake felt that familiar tingle at the back of his neck. "How aggressive?" "They destroyed a Korthak outpost without warning and refused all attempts at communication. Greythak is concerned that they may be expanding into inhabited space." Jake nodded slowly. The galaxy was a big place, and humanity was still learning just how many different kinds of people lived in it. Some of them, apparently, were not as reasonable as the Zilani or as honorable as the Korthak. "What does Greythak want to do about it?" "He has requested a joint task force to investigate. Human ships, Korthak warriors, and Zilani scientists working together to make contact with this new species." Jake smiled. 6 months ago, humans had been alone in the galaxy. Now they were part of something bigger, something that might be able to face whatever challenges the universe threw at them. "Tell Greythak we're in," Jake said. "When do we leave?" 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of the UHS Discovery as it prepared to depart New Thaisara. The ship had been refitted with Korthak shields and Zilani sensors, making it more powerful than any vessel in human history. But it was still recognizably human in its solid, practical design. His crew had changed too. Lieutenant Amy Walsh now worked with a Zilani science officer who could calculate quantum equations in her head. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker had learned to combine human engineering with alien technology, creating hybrid systems that were more reliable than anything any single species could build alone. Dr. Ben Torres, now Director of Interspecies Medicine, had developed medical techniques that could treat humans, Zilani, and Korthak with equal effectiveness. His research had saved thousands of lives and earned him honorary citizenship in all 3 species. As the Discovery undocked from the station, Jake received final messages from Admiral Davis and President Carter. The mission was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Find the new alien species, establish contact, and determine if they were a threat to the Alliance. "Captain," Amy reported from her station, "all systems green. The Korthak escorts are in position, and the Zilani science. Ships are ready." Jake settled into his captain's chair and looked around at his mixed crew. Humans, Zelani, and Korthak working side by side, united by a simple idea that had changed the galaxy. Sometimes the right thing to do is just to help. "Take us out," Jake ordered. As the small fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the unknown, Jake reflected on how much had changed since that day when they first encountered the stranded Zelani fleet. Humanity had proven that compassion was not weakness, that helping others made everyone stronger, and that the universe was big enough for everyone if people were willing to work together. The stars ahead held new challenges, new peoples to meet, and new problems to solve. But Jake was no longer worried about facing them alone. The galaxy had learned something important from humanity, and humanity had learned something equally important from the galaxy. Together, they could handle whatever came next.